Hello, everyone. My name is Lingjia, and I'm a member of the Executive Committee of the National Spectrum Consortium. And I'd like to welcome you to our Tech Talk series. Today's Tech Talk features Dr. Wanshi Chen, Chair of 3GPP Technical Specification Group Radio Access Network, TESG RAN. Dr. Chen will share perspectives and priorities related to the next gen 3GPP release, and will lay out the opportunities and challenges defining the future 5G advanced and 6G. Then we will have a few minutes for Q&A at the end of the hour. The discussion sets the stage for a series of additional tech talks planned for later this fall that will explore some of the technical areas discussed in greater details. Before I turn it to Dr. Chen, I just want to say a few words about NSC. As NSC, we are a 400+ member organization working with the government and each other to incubate, accelerate, and operationalize revolutionary advancing technology. NSC member teams provide cutting-edge technical solutions to our nation's most pressing opportunities and challenges, unlocking spectrum potential through sharing advanced wireless technologies and ecosystems. Please feel free to reach out to me or other members of the executive committee if you're interested in learning more about our organization. With that said, let me present to you Dr. Wanshi Chen. I get to know Wanshi more than 14 years ago when I was a standard delegate in 3GPP Round 1. Now he's a 3GPP TSG RAN chair. This position sometimes is called the king of 3GPP within our community. Without introducing further ado, let us welcome Wanshi.
Thank you, Lingjia. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Wanshi. Today it's really my pleasure to be here to give a quick introduction of what's happening in 3GPP, particularly related to Release 18. I hope this works. Yeah, so here's the outline of my talk. I'd like to start with a short bio of myself, and then try to present you the RAN progress considering this pandemic. As you can imagine, there's a lot of impact since COVID-19 started. So we had a lot of measures taken, try to see how to manage 3GPP work. And I also give you a status of Release 17 before we talk about Release 18, particularly in terms of the current release situation and also meeting planning for both Release 17 and 18. And I'll just focus on the remaining of the talk on the Release 18 planning. We're still kind of in the early planning phase. I'll give you a quick summary of what we have been done, particularly in terms of the workshop, which was finished 2 weeks ago, and also some planning about Release 18 after the workshop and some high-level considerations for Release 18 package. So here's a short bio of myself. I'm right now the chair of 3GPP TESG RAN. So this is the plenary. The primary functionality is more or less to manage the projects that we will have from the RAN side. There's also 2 other different TESGs. One is called SA, the other one is called CT. So I'm on the RAN side. Before I was appointed to RAN plenary chair, I was Round 1 chair. Round 1 in 3GPP is more like the physical layer part, which is responsible to specify the over-the-air interface for 3GPP. So I was chair for 4 years, started from August 2017, and before that I was vice chair also for 4 years. I have over 20 years of experience in telecommunications. Kind of funny on more like working for different companies from different sides of the end-to-end wireless system. I work for China Mobile on the operator side. I also work for Ericsson on the infra side, and now of course working for Qualcomm on the UE vendor side. I got my PhD from USC. One thing I'm so proud I have to list here is my marathon time. I love running. Is one achievement I'm so proud that to put here. Sub 3 hours for marathon is something really proud of. So here I want to give you a quick summary of the progress we've made so far since the start of the pandemic. As we all know, this COVID-19 started early last year. Because of that, we had to cancel all these physical meetings that we planned for 3PP since 2020. But we have to, of course, still need to make a good progress for the standard, because this 5G standardization is critical for commercial deployment and for future evolution. To do that, we use these electronic meetings, including using both emails and conference calls. And even at this point in time, so far we have been using all the e-meetings. Even at this point in time, it's still unclear we can possibly resume to physical meetings. At least until the end of this year, everything will be electronic. We'll try to decide probably in this September how to resume or whether to resume, maybe starting from the first quarter of next year. Despite all these different challenges, in general, we are very resilient and work extremely hard to try to handle the crisis and try to minimize the potential impact. So we have a lot of, over the time, you can imagine, we also learn a lot over the entire process. So we have a lot of detailed procedures and guidance that we developed over time, and also refined over time, to try to improve the e-meeting efficiency, and also try to provide a good balance between work and personal life. The reason for that, you can imagine, because once you work from home and once you do everything virtually, it's also hard to draw a line between the work and personal life. So we try to strike a good balance between the two. And also we have to have very good planning and coordination between different working groups, because in run we have a physical layer run 1, make arts layer for run 2, the backhaul for run 3, and performance requirement for run 4. And we had to have good planning and coordination among these different working groups, and also try to have good planning across different TESGs. I mentioned SSCT before. This also needed good coordination. We also developed various tools for us to use to try to improve the way how we are working. There's something called new working method, just kind of online tool for us to be able to edit the documents simultaneously by multiple people, multiple companies. This is a very convenient way to avoid any kind of potential conflict if you just use the traditional way using email to collect views, comments, and things. Also, we also have this electronic voting too, because as you may know that all the chairs and vice chairs have to be elected, by voting from different members. And before the pandemic, everything's done physically. Now we use the electronic voting too to make it happen. And overall, we still make very good progress considering the limitation we have. This is something we really feel proud. Of course, this efficiency can never measure with a physical meeting, but we still made really good progress so far. And we also plan to use some lessons learned during this e-meeting era to see how to be possibly used for future physical meetings. And this is a summary of the researching status in 3P RAN. A few key timelines I want to emphasize. So we already had 2 releases so far for 5G, release 15 and release 16. Now we are towards end of release 17, with the goal to have this so-called run 1 freeze, basically try to finish all the functionalities by December of this year, basically end of the year. And then we will have this so-called stage 3 freeze. This is more referring to run 2, run 3, run 4, other different working groups to get it done by March. And this signaling SN.1 freeze by June. And of course, performance from run 4 side is going to be a little bit later. So as you can see, we have this kind of staggered approach to get things done. But this has been in a way kind of ambitious goal, just because of the limitation of the e-meetings. So that's when we have to do very careful planning and management to make sure that we can still complete things in time. At the same time, we also need to monitor the progress very carefully and then take actions whenever necessary. To give example, in the June plenary meeting that we had, I think more like 1 month ago, we already had the first discussion, look at the overall progress of the 17 projects and try to see whether we need to do some kind of down scoping or prioritization to make sure that everything is on track. We'll probably do the same in September, particularly for the ones that need to be done by December to see whether we're on track and whether we need to take some actions. And this is the overall planning we had so far. We try to look forward, but at the same time not to look too much forward. The primary reason is that we were still hopeful that we could resume to physical meetings whenever it's possible. So that's, as you can see here, the planning so far for until the end of the year is everything are planned at e-meetings. For the first quarter of next year, we cannot prepare two different ways, one the e-meetings, one the physical meetings, because we don't know so far, and something to be decided later. One thing I want to point out, you can see that in particular in December of this year, we're going to have this so-called TESG 94 run plenary meeting. This is the plenary meeting we'll try to use to have this so-called RIS 18 package approval. The idea is that, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have RIS 17 to be done in round 1 in December. At the same time, we need to have the planning ready for the next release, which is RIS 18. I'm going to give more details, what could be part of RIS 18. But from timeline-wise, we already started a workshop, as you can see, from June 28th to July 2nd. This is the first discussion of RIS 18 in this workshop. And we had a bunch of very careful planning already about this RIS 18 email discussion, for example, from August 30th to 3rd, and then which can be further consolidated in September, and then followed by another email discussion in October. So this is more like 6 months of planning and discussion to be able to make sure that we're ready to have a good discussion and a good approval of the RIS 18 package. Okay, and then now let's move on to the workshop. This is something really fresh. We're happy that this talk is right after the workshop, so we know a lot of details, at least the first discussion and the first summary that we had from this workshop. As I mentioned earlier, the dates was June 28th to July the 2nd. So it's a 5-day workshop. It's the first discussion we ever had for RIS 18 in CPU run. One thing in particular that, as you can see on this top right, we have this new logo that's being approved by CPP to use, starting from RIS 18. Now we call it 5G Advanced. As you can imagine, we already have, after we're done with RIS 17, we're going to already have 3 releases for 5G. And then RIS 18 more or less can be built a second phase of 5G. That's the opportunity that we could further evolve 5G at the same time to look at projects that can give us a longer term benefits. So this is a logo, and this will be used by 3PP, of course, for other members also. And in particular for the workshop, we have more than 500 submissions from 80 different companies, organizations, and the participants for this workshop are actually quite good. I'm personally very pleasantly surprised by this many participants. Over 1,200 checked in to participate in this workshop. We already had a very careful organization and before the workshop in terms of how we actually draft the agenda. We kind of categorize this into 3 different tracks. The goal, of course, try to, because this is the second phase 5G, also take the opportunity to try to see how we can have some discussion shooting for some immediate needs, the commercial deployments, at some same time to look at a little bit longer term commercial needs. So to that end, we have the 3 agenda items. One is called EMBB. This is the traditional evolved mobile broadband for any evolution along this line. And then also have non-EMBB, sometimes also called vertical domain expansion. For example, satellite communication, V2X, to name a couple. And then we also have this so-called cross functionalities. You can also call it new areas that can be beneficial for both the EMBB and non-EMBB. I show here a chart here to show the submissions kind of roughly how these three different agenda in terms of the submissions. You can see roughly is balanced, but the one thing is important to know that it's sometimes really hard to give a precise definition. What is the EMBB or non-EMBB? And apparently, we should not surprise us also that different companies seem to have different understanding. Let's say a particular topic, whether it's belong to EMBB or non-EMBB, and even in terms of the cross functionalities. So it is something rough, but it already give a good indication that overall the evolution that we can foresee and also we try to manage will be balanced evolution across the different tracks. But we don't plan to use these three categorization any further because this balance is already being achieved, and also will be something to keep in mind anyway. And also because of the precise definition is not something easy to converge, and also frankly not important to converge anyway. Okay, so this one thing that we decided during the workshop is to have a tentative decision in terms of the timeline or duration rather for the release 18, because I'm not sure how familiar with how we manage the project in 3PP. Typically, we have the different releases. Each release will have a particular duration. This is important for us to see how many projects we can prove, and also to possibly dimension the project to make sure that it can fit into the time duration. So for this release, we decide to have 18 months, but this of course to be further confirmed and to be further decided along with other TSGs to make sure that we have more or less a coordination across different TSGs. This already mentioned earlier, so this is at least from the submission from the workshop and also from discussion. This is very, very important or very, very good to note that the evolution seems to be quite balanced. This balance in terms of balanced mobile broadband evolution versus further vertical domain expansion, and also balance in terms of immediate versus long-term commercial needs, and also from device versus network perspective. So this is something really good to note. And then I mentioned that in the meeting planning that we saw a few slides earlier, that we're gonna have some email discussion during August 30th to September 3rd. These will be managed also to use a list of topics that I'm gonna show you the details of we overall have more or less 17 different topics. These will be further discussed and try to refine the potential areas. And then, I think it's fair to say that once it comes to resetting package, most likely the package will come from this list of topics. So it's also, but of course, there's nothing guaranteed that topics being discussed will be part of it, but at least some of it will be approved for resetting. And I'm going to try to show you for each topic the some example areas. This will be served as a starting point for further discussion. Of course, depending on discussion, things can be updated, even removed, and some new areas may also be added. So this is the list. I'd like to go through maybe one by one to see how it stands. The first one is done in MIMO. MIMO is a topic that's been, I think, pretty much in every single release so far, for at least from 4G days. But this is something that been there, and we continue evolving in this direction. At least a few areas being proposed by many companies. One is full enhancement for CSI, channel state information, particularly in terms of handling mobility, the overhead reduction, all the different things. Another area is this evolved handling of multiple TRP. TRP stands for transmission reception points. In a way, you can also, it's basically, more than one TRP may be involved in the services, and there could be some coordination, even joint service that can be performed. And also multi-beam, and also the CPE, specific considerations. This is for the case where this is the case. Maybe you can potentially explore some even higher order modulation, to have to target for even higher data rate. Also, maybe some other area for enhancements. So that's some continuation of this. I mean, this can, of course, this definitely belongs to the traditional EMBB category. We also have these uplink enhancements. I mean, as you can imagine, typically when we're doing this standardization, there's a lot of assumptions we made. One assumption we typically made is that downlink typically is more heavy than uplink in terms of traffic load. But now there's also increasing interest and need to also address some uplink oriented, or at least uplink heavy traffic. To that end, we're gonna have dedicated emails to talk about some particular uplink enhancements, including more than 40x operation, and also this multi-panel, this particular, related to this so-called FR2 minimum wave operation, and also multi-TRP, which is mentioned earlier for uplink. That, of course, in terms of multiple TRP may be involved in terms of receiving the uplink transmission. And also this frequency selective precoding. This is more like talking about, you may have different subbands where code precoding may be done differently for uplink, and also for the current enhancements. We already had a project in RIS17 now work on these uplink current enhancements, but it's expected that some additional current enhancement may be necessary. And another, the third topic is called mobility enhancements. This is something already, in a way, it's kind of continuation, but this is ever, let's say, increasing desire to further enhance the mobility management, in particular in terms of level 1 and 2, there's inter-cell mobility, something called DAPS. This is basically dual active protocol stack and conditional handover, relative improvements. And in particular, there's a strong interest to further improve or enhance the mobility management for FR2 for minimum wave based operation. Okay, and then move on. We're gonna have also another topic, which is the fourth topic, which is being called additional topological improvements. These particularly in terms of two areas being proposed, being mentioned by many companies. One is called mobile IRB. This is integrated access backhaul. A lot of benefits that we can have with IRB. It's also connect with the vehicle mounted relay (VMR). This is something that can further give us more flexibility in terms of the topology for network deployment. And smart repeater with side country information. This is also kind of continuation from the existing project in RIS17, where we already have the repeater, but it's not smart enough. So we want to try to explore whether we could introduce some kind of smartness for the repeater. For example, to be able to dynamically turn on, turn off. Maybe the beams can be managed a little bit smarter. These kind of things. So there's something to be further discussed. The fifth project is called XR. This is in a way also continuation of the existing project, which is right now in RIS17 in the study item. So we try to study the potential areas that have been lacking of, or something at least that maybe areas that can be further improved. And this right now, this email discussion try to aim for the potential continuation of the study item to convert into so-called work item. That's this work item is the one that we've been using to actually have the final certification. And these areas including the KPIs, this key performance metrics, and also QS data handling. This application awareness operation. This is not talking about this cross-layer design where imagine physical layer is aware of some kind of particular traffic pattern or traffic needs the physical layer operation can be done better. And also, of course, for XR, we need to care a lot about the power consumption, the coverage, capacity, and mobility. These different areas that we can further explore to try to improve the XR experience. These 6 projects, this is also kind of very interesting projects. It actually draw very strong interest by the entire group. This is talking about we call it Sunlink. This is more like your traditional access link, and then Starlink just, in a way, it's kind of connect to V2X or peer-to-peer communications, the kind of things. We already have the projects in release 16 talking about V2X, which was further enhanced release 17. But now we try to further expand use cases and further improve this Starlink operation, which is including Starlink specific enhancements, for example, to possibly consider unlicensed spectrum to see how can further improve power savings, because you can imagine power saving is always an important thing for us to consider. And efficiency enhancements, for example, MIMO, whether MIMO should be done differently. Right now, is the MIMO for Starlink is limited to rank 2. Maybe it can be further improved, and also maybe carrier gauging can be enabled, all these different things. And Starlink really enhancements another area. This may come from two different flavors. You may have so-called U2U, UE to UE relays. You may also have UE to maybe to some infrastructure or RSU. RSU is called roadside unit to have a full enhancement on this. And then we also have a topic called coax between LTV2X and NR-V2X. This is try to see, because we already have this LTV2X, one tries to make sure that the coax between the two can be done well, to see whether any area can be improved. The seventh area called RedCap. This is the RedCap basically means reduced capability. We have the traditional EMBB operation, so of course it's target for smartphones, but then of course it's come with a lot of cost, complexity. But we have some other use cases where we do not need this fully enabled EMBB features. So that's why we have this RedCap, which is started in with 17. So this could be continuation of these projects, particularly to look at even further new use cases and new bandwidth. Right now for RedCap in so-called FR1, the sub-7 gigahertz carrier frequency, the bandwidth is at least is fixed at 20 megahertz, more or less. And then we'll see whether it could further reduce the bandwidth to 5 megahertz, and of course along with the additional power saving enhancements. This 8th project is NTN. This is also the project being kind of continued from release 17. We already have some work item already done for NTN, including both this so-called NR, basically EMBB specs, and also the IoT, Internet of Things specs. Already right now it's being working on release 17. This of course can be further enhanced in release 18. Similarly for broadcast and multicast services, we have this traditional LTE-based 5G broadcast. You're talking about more like high power, these kind of things. Of course, there are some other variations. And then you also have this 5G and MBS multicast broadcast services. So that could be fully enhancement in this area. And also positioning, we already done quite I think at least 2 releases for positioning. The accuracy has been improved over the 2 different releases. Of course, there's always room to further improve to the centimeter level of accuracy, and also to check the integrity of the positioning. And of course, when you do the positioning, you also want to make sure the power efficiency can be improved. And also one particular area that's been actually been studied so far is to see how to enable and how to perform Starlink positioning, including ranging, because for V2X, especially for V2P type applications, the ranging may become critical. And also for reduced cap, for RedCap, reduced capability UEs, how to also improve positioning in that case. And these 3 areas, in a way, you can view them more or less maybe for a little bit longer term, if you will. One is called evolution of duplex operation. In a way, you can call it full duplex. Of course, there's different understanding of what full duplex means. But at least one flavor of full duplex you can do is that within the same frequency band, you may have some subband, let's say, doing downlink, some subband doing uplink. These are the cases where you can exploit to see whether it can improve latency, including system efficiency, even link level efficiency, of these kind of different things. Of course, this always comes with a cost in terms of complexity, in terms of inference management, which can be intra-cell, inter-cell, the same link interference, different link interference, which we also call the cross-link interference, also in different areas. That's something important to further explore. I do believe this is, if you're going to be approved, probably going to be a study item first to try to study the different scenarios, how to handle interference, these different flavors of the duplexing operation. Number 12, I think this one, I hope it's not surprising to you. This has been actively pursued, I think especially in the academic field. This AI machine learning. We'll try also to see how we could possibly incorporate this into 5G framework. This has come, of course, not just from air interface perspective, including the potential use cases. For example, whether it's in CSI or positioning or some other areas we could use to help improve the 5G system. Also KPIs, what are these key metrics that can use to evaluate the system, including evaluation methodology, and how UE or network would be involved in terms of enabling this AI machine learning for the air interface. There's also the NGRAM part. This is more a high layer part, AI machine learning. For example, how you could to use the data collection to better manage mobility, even the network deployment, all the different things. So that's come from 2 different flavors. I think this is also, if anything, of course, going to be a study item to see how they can be possibly incorporated. And then we have network energy savings. There's a lot of emphasis, if you will, that when I discussed the previous topics about UE power savings, but now we also we also have very strong interest to see how we could further improve energy savings on network side. Basically, especially now we have very large bandwidth and larger set of antennas, particularly for higher carrier frequency. So it's critical for us to be able to see how to improve this energy savings, including the KPIs, evaluation methodology, the focus areas, and also, of course, potential solutions. So these are 3 individual topics, if you will, that's been drawing a lot of attention. That's been also listed as the individual email topics. We have some other additional topics, which in a way you can view them more or less in the second league. There are some interest, but not as strong as the previous 13 ones. And of course, there's also some other proposals which were not explicitly listed, which are also grouped on the others, as you can see in this 14th topic. We have something additional UE Power 7 proposals. This enhancing extending support beyond 52.6 gigahertz, could be up to 114 gigahertz. This additional carrier aggregation dual connectivity enhancements, particularly in terms of this multi-radio, multi-connectivity enhancement, where you may have more than dual connectivity, let's say, maybe triple connectivity. The flexible spectrum integration, and try to see whether it could possibly have more flexible integration or aggregation, if you will, of different spectrum into a single CC for all savings. And the RIS, this reconfigurable intelligent services, I think is also draw a lot of attention in the academic field. That's also being brought up by big companies. And some other topics which were not explicitly mentioned, tons of proposals also being mentioned by some other companies. For example, just give examples like a visible light. I think mentioned by some company, blockchain, whatever. And then we have the 15th topic is also a group of additional topics similar to 14. This is set 2. We have this unmanned aerial vehicle, which is not something completely new, of course, because it's already been handled somehow in LTE. So I'll try to see whether how we can do some work on the 5G side. IoT URC, this has been done already in a couple releases. There's still some companies, some interest in this area, but of course we have to see how this can be possibly managed, whether there's still a strong need to further evolve, and even so, how this can be possibly managed in terms of project management. And also there's some interest, this kind of some special interest from some company to see how to enable even let's say the smaller bandwidth in some dedicated spectrum. For example, railway, some kind of dedicated services. Other IoT enhancement types also being brought up, and also HAPS. This is a little bit connected with NTN, but of course the altitude for this case is quite different from NTN. And network coding was also being mentioned by a few companies. And then we also have this number 16. This is additional topics. This is more like being categorized in a way. All these topics are more or less talking about not physical layers, more like high layers. We're talking about interdisciplinary coordination. With these 3 different example areas like modal care operation, modal TIP operation, resilience of Geno BCU, and then network slicing enhancements. Of course, the network slicing is not something new, but it's already been worked on for a few releases that could be fully enhanced. It's MU SIM. This is particular of strong interest in some countries. And now UE aggregation. This is the case where you could possibly aggregate multiple UEs, especially when they're really close by, to see how to do things better in terms of getting the service, perhaps also including how to improve the reliability, and also security enhancements. The security is always an important topic for sure. And the SON MDT, SON is self-organizing networks, MDT minimization driver test. This is also by itself is not something new, but it's something can be fully improved. And then also run to run 3 LED, some other proposals which are not explicitly listed. And the last one is the potential rainfall enhancement. As I mentioned, rainfall is the group where we talk about the performance requirements. This typically the management project for rainfall side is typically a little bit lagging behind compared to run 1, run 2, run 3, which is typical. So right now the proposal for potential rainfall enhancements compared with the run 1, run 2, run 3 are still quite premature. So that's when we have a single EMS to possibly solicit maybe a little bit more inputs and to see how we can possibly manage potential enhancement for rainfall. And then to give you an idea how we already mentioned this timeline thing, I have 6 months of discussion and management, targeting the approval by December, particularly for round 1, round 2, round 3. And here is some additional information just to show you how we plan to do things, to basically all the steps necessary to move to the final line. We're going to have email discussion, of course, in August. Try to aim for this converge high-level discussion of these topics, particularly in terms of areas. And then we're going to have some consolidation or resetting proposed in the next round plenary, which will be in September, middle of September. After which we'll have some further email discussion with the goal to refine the discussion of the potential start items or work items, including detailed scope or cross-item check, because some items may, especially some objectives may have some correlations or even overlapping, so it's good to some cross-item check. And then we try to approve this package in December, which will be 2 weeks for the e-meeting for round plenary, which is never happened before, just because of the need to approve the package and the need to use the e-meetings for 2 weeks for the plenary in December. And we could also try to have my best effort to see whether we can approve some items for round 4. But if not, it's okay. We're still gonna have an additional discussion in February. We will go in March to approve the rest of round 4 package for this 18, maybe even all of them. So we'll try to see how the round 4 discussion goes in terms of maturity, also in terms of potential correlation with the existing project and resetting. And then this, I think this last slide, this is just my high-level thinking in terms of this 18 package. I think you can probably draw a little bit from what I discussed so far. At least I do see the recent package need to be balanced We're already talking about the 3 different tracks, and also short-term versus long-term commercial needs. The second bullet, we're talking about the true commercial interest, because as you all know that the 3PP, we have different working groups. Each working group really has a very limited capacity. So we have to try to make sure each group is really busy, but not to overload them, and that's become very critical part to manage the project such that the project can really reflect commercial interest. So when other groups try to do some kind of research without any potential for commercial deployments, so that's something to try to avoid. And then of course we also need to be able to quickly react to the urgent commercial needs. So this is important because right now we already have seen a very wide range of 5G commercial deployments. Any issues we found, we can possibly find in the field, we have to be able to react and address them immediately from 3P perspective. Of course, lastly, reasonable loaded. I mentioned the capacity. The capacity will be critical. We want to make sure, the delegates can be really involved, but of course not too much. So that's really we have to make the load reasonable. And there's also this is something still being considered, but it's not final. But at least I'd like to reserve some capacity even in December when approved resetting package, maybe 10%, 15%. This can be kind of try to strike a good balance between the package we're going to approve, which can give a really good message to 3PP and outside 3PP, what do we plan to do for Release 18? It's sometimes to reserve some capacity to perhaps to particularly to prove some new items Release 18, for Release 18 maybe in a later date, just because of some items may not mature at the same speed. And also to try to address some immediate critical needs, I mentioned from commercial deployments. And also I also feel that working group chairs, I was running chair before, I know all the pressure, all the challenges, if you will, to try to get things done. So I also like to give some flexibility for volunteers in terms of how they're going to manage and deliver the RAM Plenary approved project successfully. I think this last slide. Thank you so much. Definitely from us, open for questions and comments.
Well, thank Wanshi for the very nice talk. And I'm also joined by my colleague on the executive committee, Dr. David Love. And feel free to type in your questions, and David and I will help you to deliver this to Dr. Chen. And while we are waiting for the comments and questions, I have one for actually Wanshi. So, I mean, first of all, I think it's really a difficult task to coordinate this event remotely, because as a delegate, I know in-person and face-to-face interaction is so important for all those technical discussions and coordination. And since you listed quite a few topics for Release 18 5G Advanced, some of the topics, for example, non-terrestrial network, right? I mean, it's the scenario seems to be very different from, let's say, terrestrial network or ground network. So, I mean, if you have this new ground network component comes in, will actually some of the foundational features of will be changed? For example, I'm talking about waveform and numerology.
Yeah, thank you, Lingjia. Very good question. Very, very good question. I mean, first of all, as you know, we're building this 5G starting from Release 15 and to really have I would say a good framework that can accommodate all different services, deployment scenarios, different spectrum, at some time to be forward compatible. Now, when you introduce NTN services to 5G, one of the goals is try to maximize what we already have in the TN side, in terrestrial network side, for this NTN application. Because in a way, this also, this of course it depends on how the use case for NTN, but you do have a case where maybe you also want to enable NTN on the smartphone. And in that case, if you really want to develop some kind of new waveform or even new cooling schemes, it just makes things definitely less appealing, let's say. It also increased a lot of implementation complexity. So far, I think everybody agrees that all the fundamental physical blocks will stay the same way. It's just a matter of trying to figure out what's unique to NTN. And one thing, as you can imagine, in particular, just because the round trip delay is so large, we have to somehow handle this even very, very long delay. And also this mobility, of course, the speed, the Doppler frequency, everything is much higher. We also need to handle this kind of aspects. So stuff like this, that's something that's being focused on for NTA. But eventually, of course, once we have this basic stuff being set up, being specified, of course, also include IT aspects. Now we also need to look at least, some companies want to look at, can we further improve NTN? Maybe in terms of, should there be any interaction between NT and TN? Maybe in terms of handover, or maybe it should be whether GNSS is available or not. Stuff like this, there'll be some additional areas that can be potentially explored.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, so still kind of unify the network on the terrestrial and non-terrestrial per se. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. And at least personally, I don't see the need to develop any kind of let's say coding in 5 days. Even waveform is question mark. It really depends. It all depends on I mentioned a little bit about this the higher spectrum until 114 gigahertz. That could be the opportunity where some new waveform may be developed, as long as you don't have some kind of backward compatible issues.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so I have a question from the audience. How will release 18 proposals between RAN and SA be prioritized? Will there be a voting process?
That's a good question. First of all, we are managing a project not based on voting. So voting, 3G, CP is a technical standard. It's not it's not a beauty contest. It's not about you have proposal, how many companies support. It doesn't work. At least ideally, it shouldn't work that way. We do look at this all the projects. First of all, from very systematic manner to see all the LC putting together and to see working group capacity. Particularly, also like to draw the comments from the operator side or whoever going to deploy these potential features. Because eventually, as I mentioned earlier, the whole purpose for us to work on 3GPP is not about research; it's about commercial deployments. For whoever operator can deploy it, to serve the customers, of course, to make money, and then it's more like a beating cake. When the cake is larger, everybody can share some shares. So that's the primary purpose. So voting is not the criteria that we're going to use to manage projects. Rather, we look at all the inputs, all the needs from all different sides and try to make a more informed decision. Because eventually, that's really I mentioned this last slide talking about this rooted to true commercial needs. So this is what matters. We have to try to avoid 3GPP from discounting from commercial realities. Because I imagine there's certain different desires, certain different angles people see things in terms of the new projects. Some company may have their own interest to develop some new techniques, which may not see the commercial deployment even in the next 10 years. So, but in that case, even have strong interest, is still a question mark whether should do it or not, because this is something we have to work as a group.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead and ask another one from the audience. This audience has a lot of interests in hybrid public-private 5G networks and private 5G networks. So given that, what are the release 18 areas that folks in the audience should look at? For example, unlicensed enhancements. What should they pay attention?
In terms of, if I understand the question correctly, you're talking about the public versus the private or non-public networks. So there are already some projects ongoing on this. I think if you see here, we have the others run 2, run 3 lights. By the way, this doesn't mean that we'll not prove anything under others. It really depends on the interest level and to see the commercial needs. Eventually, if it's fully justified, this may also be pop up as a resetting project. So this, if anything, if there's strong interest to fully enhance the public versus non-public networks, that will be discussed, because 3PP is contribution driven. So if we have strong interest, if some kind of strong interest, will typically make contribution, and the 3PP will discuss to see how we should manage that. So that's one point I'd like to make. Particularly in terms of unlicensed spectrum, I think I mentioned unlicensed here in item 6. We had this unlicensed spectrum handling the projects in RIS 16, which is a very, very big project. It's a very comprehensive project talking about the potential standalone unlicensed deployment and also license assisted deployment, all the kind of different cases. And some for RIS 17, we kind of decided not to have an individual project for unlicensed anymore, but rather we try to see for each of the projects that whether or not there's anything that can be done differently or should be done differently for licensed versus unlicensed. So in a way, you can view this unlicensed is already kind of integrated into some other projects, and most likely we're going to take the same way in RIS 18. So for anything about unlicensed, if a project, it doesn't matter whether it's going to be licensed or unlicensed, we're not going to do anything because it means it's going to be applied to both cases. But it's something that needs to be specially handled for unlicensed, and this probably will be discussed and possibly can be added to the scope of the item.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, all right. You see, there's a question from the audience. So several proposals at Release 8 workshop discussed the spectrum sharing. For example, MediaTek's proposal for NTN and the TN, so non-terrestrial network and the terrestrial network sharing. Do you consider spectrum sharing a candidate for the list of Release 8 topics?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think this, if you look at this item 8 here, we didn't explicitly list any areas. This spectrum sharing was proposed, of course, by MediaTek, probably also. I haven't checked the detail, maybe also by some other companies. There's also many other proposals that been put forth by many companies in this NTN topic. So eventually, what we'll do is to look at, including NTN itself. I mean, right now there's no guarantee that any item list here will be part of RIS 18. That's something needs to be decided by the entire group. But even if NTN is decided to be part of RIS 18, the areas also need to be carefully discussed, because like the scope of the projects, what should be done, and what should not be done in RIS 18, maybe to be done in future RISs. This is a very difficult exercise. It's important for me to comment on a specific topic on the RIS 18 or not. I don't know at this point. This really depends on how the group stands, particularly in terms of offer side, whoever going to deploy NTN, whether it's strong interest to them or not, and so how strong the interest is. And then we also need to look at the working group capacity to see whether we indeed have capacity for that or not. So this is more like systematic efforts where we look at everything as a package to try, as I said, to try to make sure the working group capacity can be fully utilized, at the same time not to overload the working groups. So what I can give you just generic answer. I don't have any specific answer to any specific items. It's something honestly I don't know at this point.
All right, thanks. So I'll ask you another audience question. Is there anything more you could talk about the ORAN or machine learning applications and use cases specifically related to the physical layer and how that would affect the future 3GPP releases?
Yeah, regarding ORAN, this, of course, we have the ORAN forum. I think 3GPP already have had some discussion on this before. I mean, overall, 3GPP is open standard. So for any discussion about ORAN, from our perspective, if there's contribution on this, then we'll discuss. So that's kind of general philosophy. Definitely, we're open to ORAN discussion. Now, talking about this particular AI machine learning, if you see this potential areas here, we have something called use case to focus. There's already been quite a few use cases people mentioning. I mentioned a couple of them, like CSI is definitely probably one of the most popular items. Positioning is also one of them. You also even the transmitter receiver chain, how are you gonna try to utilize AI machine to improve that? That's also being brought up by many companies. There's quite a number of use cases people have in mind. So that's really why we need to work as a group to see which use case in the focus. And of course, one has use case and you have the corresponding modeling, even the training data to share. But overall, yeah, I mean, this something to be further refined. It's hard for me to predict what could be the use case to focus on at this point in time, but it's all being quite physically being brought up by many companies.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. There's another question from the audience. I understand that the 17 topics listed are candidate work items for Release 18 inclusion. What is your opinion regarding how strong NTN activities may be in Release 18? This is from Kelvin. Okay.
I mean, this NTN definitely, I do see a strong interest. This especially from NTN community. I think the interest level, if anything, if you look at NTN itself, we started projects from Release 16, I believe, a study item, and then we have the work item for NTN Release 17, for which we have 2 tracks. I think I mentioned here, this one of the NR model EMBB can view that, and another is IoT. Particularly IoT side, it started at a study item, but then the original plan is to get the study item done in the entire release, kind of by December. But then during the course of it, there's an increasing interest to somehow deploy IoT using NTN, using the Release 17 solution. So we have to somehow move things faster to get the study item done earlier, and then to convert this study item into a work item in Release 17 for IoT or NTN. So what I'm trying to say that the interest level for NTN has been strong. It also seems to be getting stronger somehow. At least the way I see it is getting stronger. I cannot promise anything in terms of whether something can be in the text. Not is also I'm not the of course I hope in the power to say this is gonna be in. It'll be in. It doesn't work that way. They have to rely on the entire group to see the interest, to see how things stand. But I do believe this NTN there's a strong interest for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so thanks. I think we're running low on time now. So this concludes our Tech Talk on 3GPP. On behalf of the entire National Spectrum Consortium, we want to thank you, Wanshi, for coming here and giving us many things to think about that are going to shape discussions going forward. So I'd like to thank everybody in the audience who has joined today for their participation, their questions. And as Lingjia mentioned, we'll have follow-on discussions for this that are going to occur in the fall. We're going to explore many of the issues brought up today further. And we'll hope that everyone in the audience will join us for these further discussions. So thank you again, and we hope to have a great day and hope to see you in the future.
Thanks so much, David. Thanks so much, Lingjia. Really a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Wanshi. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.